30 years, I try to bring back, some experience to cities, to Detroit. I consult cities about nighttime economies, that it makes sense. A city with a nighttime economy, a vibrating nightlife is better than no vibrating nightlife. And I explain them how to use it as a marketing tool, and how also about the economics and so, and about crime rates and stuff like that. So actually, I still run the Tresor, but I'm now turned 65, and so I give it to young people since a few years. I do also the Berlin Atonal Festival. I started in the 80s, and now it's in young hands from the analog side to the digital side. And yeah, and we have a shutdown since March 12th. We did not know in those days that it worked, and together with Berkan, we thought maybe Eastern it's open again, but we are still closed. It is a big serious problem in Berlin because we have a very many clubs, who many people, employees who working in that, also different business like hostels, small galleries, and coffees. And I mean, the whole scene has this problem. You might know it also in the and but we have some hope. On the other side, I will talk about this hope thing, and the other side also I try to find something good out of this Corona time, of this period, and no, and that was also very interesting. More, the results of this period of now, let's say 6 months, came out the positive sides, of Corona. We discuss it too. Yeah, that's
so
it.
this is the spoiler alert is yes, there's hope. So everybody has to stay tuned for the hope part. But I mean, let me start off by saying that I think one of the hardest things about this experience for people like us who work in the music industry, specifically, that's been impacted very, inexorably by the pandemic, is it makes it impossible to plan for the future. We're living day to day. We don't know when we're going to be able to work again, really. In the business of booking an event, it usually works pretty far in advance. Have any of you experienced any benefits for things being up for change at the last minute? Because now it seems as though that whatever planning we are doing is subject to change at all times. So is there anything good in that?
It's a personal training of withstanding such situations. It's getting immune to stress. It's the first thought I had when I heard the question, that it really takes a lot of energy to withstand all this, and to be ready for another shock, for another change of regulations, for another problem.
Is there some flexibility in terms of lineups or that kind of thing? Is it creating more room for movement in terms of what you're able to do?
I think that we, in terms of building a lineup and changing the lineup, for example, due course the festival. I'm in the middle of the festival, yes. And today is the day that we had to address 3 or 4 changes of flights and three cancellations. So,
wow.
And I cannot think about any good good side of it. It's really difficult. You have to be flexible. You have to be prepared. We had some even like extra slots prepared in case of any cancellations. So this is maybe like a lesson to plan ahead for this kind of stuff, because last year we didn't plan for any cancellations. This year we did. So this is maybe a new element, a new organizational element. But apart from that, I think the reality is really harsh, and there is no really positive side to it. When you try to run a festival, in Poland, there's this possibility to have an open air festival, open air events. There are really severe regulations, the social distancing and disinfection and masks. and everything. We try to make it as safe as possible. We even exceeded all the regulations. We really limited the capacities and everything, so everything looks really safe. And the festival is a hybrid festival, so mainly we present the acts online, but yet people still can be physically present on the site of the festival, and making as much of it as we can within the regulations, of course, and and common sense, because we think the regulations are sometimes are a bit naive, and people don't care about them. So we as organizers have to take care of this aspect of the event as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a lot of extra work for organizers.
Yeah, this year is the most of the work is working on this new matter of COVID.
Yeah.
Like making it safe, making it just looking for sense in it.
Another difficulty is that while the entire world is facing this problem, we are facing it at different rates of speed and intensity depending on where we are. Are there any benefits to the situation being quite different in different places at different times? So I, for instance, would think that we can learn something from places that have experienced this before we did. So, for instance, China is the obvious example, because China had it 2 months before everybody else. That we could learn something from the way China is dealing with it. So, Gaz, can you tell us about what? Because your club is actually open right now, isn't it?
I mean, it's kind of a weird feeling, because basically everything in China is open now.
Wow.
And it's kind of all back to normal. I was at a festival. I DJ'd at a festival last weekend on the beach with like 1,500 people. Nobody wearing masks. There's no feeling of like danger or anything.
Wow. No social.
So it's quite different. I mean, we closed the club originally for Chinese New Year. So that was around mid-January, around the 20th of January. And most clubs close down then, and everyone goes home. And then COVID kind of hit about a week after that. So most businesses were already shut down, and most people had traveled home, and they were in their hometown with their parents and stuff. So it was kind of weird timing. It just ended up being like an extended holiday, and it just kept on getting more and more, extended longer and longer, until it was kind of extended for like 2 months. But then we reopened the middle of April, very slowly at first. When we first reopened, we weren't allowed to do events. We could only open as a bar. And then by May, we were doing events again. And it's kind of just built up from that, basically. But now basically everywhere in China is opened. Beijing was the last place to open. That opened up last month, a few weeks ago, maybe. But now everything's kind of running as normal, apart from not being able to bring international guests over like that. But the internal scene is kind of running. Artists are touring within China.
When you reopened the club in April as a bar, did you have to use like masks and safety measures, or what were the measures in place?
So we had to take everyone's temperature at the door. Everyone arriving, you had to wear a mask when you arrived. You didn't really have to wear it indoors. So and you had to sign in. You had to give your ID card details or whatever, your passport. And also everyone has like a health code on their phone that tracks them. So you have to show that, or you used to have to show that everywhere, to show that you'd not been to like a dangerous area or something like that.
This is the contact tracing. This is the
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that sounds pretty basic. Are you still running those measures now?
No, not really.
Wow.
Most places are not. Yeah, most places are not. And we never had to do the social distancing thing.
Right.
Okay.
That never came into effect.
So you could arrive at the club wearing masks. It was obligatory, but inside there's no obligation to wear a mask.
Yeah, pretty much.
And there wasn't like
staff had to wear masks for a while.
Okay.
There wasn't like a second wave in China.
Not in Shanghai. I think there was like a small wave up in Beijing and a couple of other places, but Shanghai so far so good. Yeah.
Popez, can we see the number 2 video? I want to see the video from Wuhan, which this is a video of a festival in Wuhan. The video dates from the 18th of August, so it would have been just the weekend before that date. So this is a water park in Wuhan in mid-August. And you can see that there's quite a large party happening. Thousands of people in a water park, no masks, no social distancing. And Wuhan, of course, famously is where the outbreak of COVID was first recorded. So this is basically where China is at right now. And obviously, I don't know about you guys, but this is where I would like us to be.
Incredible.
So that's basically the situation in China now. So congratulations. Looks like you guys have basically sorted out COVID. That's remarkable, actually. Shim, what's the situation in Tokyo?
The venue I'm working at, the WWW, is reopened as sort of like a live venue and doing the event concerts. But we never opened the club nights.
You still haven't opened the club nights?
Yeah, but other clubs, like big clubs or small clubs, almost like every clubs are open because they are proper clubs. So we are the live venue.
Right. Okay.
So that's quite like a difference. Like, but the regulation is like the same, like the 1 meter social distance at minimum and all time mask on in the venue, and also like limiting the capacity, which is like half of the capacity, half of it, and also like frequent like disinfection and ventilation and the temperature taking. Yeah, ventilation, right. The temperature taking. Yeah.
Okay, so when did WWW start putting on events again?
It's like started in June, but like as a like live streaming with no audience.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's how we started, and a lot of like live venues like doing that, but also opened some events with like restrictions under like if it's WWW, it's like 120 or like 100, but like 100. It depends on the venue.
Right. Okay.
But small venues is like it's impossible to keep that like social distancing like for the capacity. So some like small clubs or bars, and they just like doing club nights like normally, as almost like it was like it's like they do care, but they really can't like keep on the regulations. That's a reality.
I mean, yeah, I mean, Tokyo is also a massive city, which is very densely populated. But
Yeah.
is it do you think that the city and the country basically have got COVID under control now at this point, or?
I think it's controlled. It seems like really controlled well, and second wave is like, I don't know if it's like second wave is coming or not, but like it's kind of like the numbers, but like infection is like getting like lower, like since last week, and regulation will be like eased from next month, like from October. Then we can do more like events, maybe with like 200, 300. So it's like making forward like step by step.
Okay, that sounds more like the situation in Europe, actually.
Okay.
But so Ria is in New York. Obviously, America is famously COVID's running rampant. Unfortunately, New York was hit really hard by the initial wave. Has anything reopened in terms of music in New York?
Yeah, so basically we're in phase 4 of reopening. We are only allowed to have incidental music, and all gathering has to be centered around food. So restaurants are able to open with maybe a little jazz trio or, you know, some acoustic music. The SLA, the State Liquor Authority, is the one that's tasked with checking up on this. My understanding is that they're making regular restaurants and bars to make sure that all of these regulations are being adhered to. They are handing out fines. They are revoking liquor licenses. So the situation is quite dire still for venues. There are some venues who have been able to open basically a restaurant on their premises, and you know, are having music in that way. There are some of the legal venues and also illegal venues have started to have some gatherings with various forms of backlash. There are gatherings happening, about 150 people or so, mostly not wearing masks. And some of those illegal parties are getting shut down. Yeah, I mean, the situation is really dire. And then also what crosses my mind on a regular basis is that the rest of the country is in various phases of opening. So whereas we have, you know, in New York, we can do relatively little, there are other places in the country that are, you know, flying people in and holding much bigger parties. So
Wow.
You know, really feeling very much like we're on our own island out here in New York.
But that's also political, though, isn't it? It's less the case that that it's safe to do that, more the case that there's some states run by certain governors which are just being quite permissive, or.
Yeah, exactly. The federal government has left most of the regulation and the approach up to the states themselves. So depending on, you know, the city, the state, a lot of different approaches, for better, for worse.
Sarra, is the UK in maybe a bit better state than that, but kind of similar, isn't it, in terms of what's allowed at the moment?
We're quite lucky in Scotland because we've got, I guess, an all right Prime Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, so it's kind of different to England. She's a bit, I don't know, fairer in her treatment of how the population should be looking after themselves. Regular updates from her, and it kind of affects the cultural sector as well. There's not been any events that I've heard of. I think most folk have just resorted to going to each other's houses and having a wave in the sitting room. But then actually the COVID numbers have gone up, and actually in the past week they've reintroduced that you're unable to even go to each other's houses. So Yeah, they're being very tight about it. But I mean, rightly so. If the numbers go up, you find a way to control that. But yeah, no parties as such. No, everyone's just
No
kind of,
legal ones anyway.
well, not even I've not even heard of any that are legal, to be honest. If there has been, it hasn't reached me.
We've seen some headlines about illegal raves in England, at least, like outside of Manchester, for instance.
Yeah, England, but that's a whole other ball game. It's just so different in Scotland. It really is. But yeah, no, I think in Scotland, I can only speak about Scotland, so it's honestly just gone to Zoom, mainly Zoom parties. That's what's resulted in, and finding new ways, I guess, to just like connect with your community other than like physical spaces.
Still, my goodness. Okay, well, that's I think that one thing that we all understand is that it's not an exaggeration to say that COVID is an existential threat to clubbing. Can any of you envision ways that clubbing itself can be adapted in the face of this pandemic? Like, are there any? Have any of you heard of any ideas of how clubbing can change? I mean, we could have an argument about whether or not streaming DJ sets is. It's not the same thing. I think we can all agree that it's not the same thing. That streaming a DJ set is not the same thing as being in the club. So, I personally struggle with the idea of can clubbing coexist with a pandemic?
I think that we still hope for a change, and we still think that we are doing something temporary just to fight the temporary state, and that the future will look more like the past, like times before the pandemic. But what I feel that will happen, that it will transform the scene forever. I think that people will still have the experience of pandemic in mind, and there will be, after the initial maybe spontaneous burst of parties, the surge of events that will, if the lockdown will, just will be when we go back to normal, when the lockdown will be over, maybe there will be like a surge of events, but after some time, maybe people will think about a different form of spending the time in clubs, and how the culture could be experienced together and still safe, and maybe there will be less consumption in it. This is the topic that really is on my mind has been on my mind for some time, that the clubbing became a big business, and I personally used my time to think, to ponder on the idea of making less related to consumption and business, and to go back to the roots, because it was out of control, in my opinion, especially here in Europe. The big bookings, the pursuit of bigger events, the competition between festivals, big companies, big corporations buying festivals. I think that this is not the way to go when we think about the real scene, not the scene that is run to make money.
Yeah. What about, have any of you come up with any new creative initiatives that somehow maybe use your space in a different way, or your project in a different way? So can I just use this example? Dimitri, we heard that Tresor was advertising that people could come in to Tresor and play on the Tresor decks, on the Tresor sound system, and pay a fee to do that. And I thought that was actually a really funny idea. I thought it was a fun and a funny idea. So you guys did that?
Actually, this was a part of a crowdfunding situation. Oh, can you hear me? We did a crowdfunding for the Tresor Club, and there was one possibility to play behind the decks of Tresor and maybe to record it. Some people misunderstood it, but some understood and said, yeah, that's my chance, and so they came by. But we have some other ideas. And actually, it was, I think, I don't know, 10 people wanted to come by, and we could make like with a crowdfunding, we could make like 100,000 euros, you know, that helped us a lot in 3 weeks, 100,000, yeah. But you know, Berghain, for instance, starts now, I think this weekend or next weekend with a big, they met an art collector.
Yep,
and
that's right.
they start huge exhibition over 3 months, you know, but the entire club and the all other venues in Berghain, you know, will open. And it happens that only in small groups, like 6 or 8 people, they have a leader in different languages. So you can go through this exhibition, but you need at least um, two times to get a ticket because it's such a big exhibit. And we have actually a very interesting idea for Tresor now for the techno club. We talked to a virologist, a scientist, you know, and this is really happening in Hamburg very soon this month. And what it looks like this, you know, imagine you want to go to Tresor tomorrow, you get a special app, you know, and this app, you give all your informations, your data, and you buy a ticket and you buy a test, a quick test, you know. Testing is a future subject, I think, testing. And this test is quite cheap now. It will be between 4 and 7 or 8 euros, you know, so we could share maybe with the customer, the club and the customer. So, and then you get an information that you come the next day and you do a quick test, you know, at between 11 in the morning and 4 afternoon. And this test is also easier. You can just, you spit into a pipe and that's it. You have something in your mouth for 1 minute. It's not like this test we know now from airports, so it's not so comfortable. Anyway, a simple test, 1 minute, and then by 6 o'clock evening, same day, you get an information on your app. It's personalized app, you know, you get the information negative, for instance. And then you come to the club midnight, you know, they test it, they look at if it's you, you know, it's personalized, the tickets. And then you can meet at Tresor. We think about, we get 600-700 people, negatives, but also our security and our bartender and everybody is all negative. And the test gives you a guarantee, more than 99%, that you do not spread over the next 36 hours. That's the result. So actually you go to the club, you party maybe to the next morning, 12 o'clock, and then you go home. Even if you get infected by going home in the tube, you have still enough time to hang out a second night at the club, you know. And this is maybe a chance, you know, to the next weekend. It's a serious chance, and they tested it by, I think, mid-September in Hamburg on the Reeperbahn Festival in 3 venues. And we will be the club in Berlin, I think, the test club soon in October. So we will report about it, and that is a chance. I mean, the virologist told me also by end of the year, they have developed a test that takes only 10 minutes, you know. It's like you just breathe, you know, and if you have red, you can go home, and if you have green, you go into the club, you know, and it costs not so much, 4 or 5 euros, and it's safe, you know. And I think this is a big advantage, and we have to live with COVID, I think, the next time. I never would enter a club where there is a risk, you know, but if I know that most of the people have a negative test result, you know, people would come and go, and this will be the future, I think, also in the next months. And I don't think that we find something something like an injection and everything is fine. We didn't find it for AIDS, and we won't find it for COVID in the next month. I think at least another year will take another year to be really, if we are lucky, you know. And I mean, whoever been in Berlin knows the crazy parties, you know, and this time will be over for a while. I think it will change. It will change, and But this new testing situation, I believe in that. You know, this might be a chance. And also what I said before, we work on a project now with Brian Eno in the power plant. We want to do a quiet space, you know, a quiet space where you can listen to good music, not too loud, but where you can lie down on a carpet. You know, it looks really funny. We did a setup, and you hang out there and listen to good music. You keep the distance, but we also do a test situation in a big power plant. When we're talking about clubs, you know, I'm talking about 500, 600, 700 people. The bigger venue, the power plant, it's more like 2,000 or so. But this is my vision, that we will have that we believe in this quick testing, you know, in this quick test, and that we can open the doors maybe by end of October, November, but you will hear about it. And
I mean,
this is for me is something serious.
yeah. I think that if testing were fast and cheap and easily accessible, that this would be a very useful stopgap measure for all of us.
That was my question, was who was actually funding the app, like for this app to be made? Is it a government thing, or is it just like the cultural sector within Germany doing it? Like, who's making it available for clubbers to purchase?
Dimitri, do you know?
This is a result of a series of biologists from Hamburg. You know, it's supported by a pharma company, you know, and from the chemical industry. But the test that maybe they asked for like 150 euros or dollars, and this is crazy. This is mafia prices, you know. But I think the testing will be much cheaper, and it will like this test, you know, from pregnant. With Schwangerschaft, if you're pregnant, you know, similar like that. It will be very simple, the virologist said, but right. It's like a private thing. But it's accepted. You have to run through different tests in Germany. Germany is very straight about that. You know, you cannot fool around with the authorities. But it looks really good, and this, since they work on this since months, and it's good for different events, for opera houses, you know, for choirs, for swimming pool, for schools, and whatever, you know. And I have all the information already. It's called LAMP, this project. It's not official in the newspapers or in the internet, but it's completely actually tested already. And now they do it for the first time in reality, you know, I think on the Reeperbahn Festival. In 3 venues, I think in 2 clubs and in 1 theater place. And then we know more.
I will say that Germany does seem to be taking the way that this is affecting the events industry seriously. There was actually a big experiment run in Leipzig a couple of weeks ago, where they had something like 10,000 volunteers go to a stadium show, and they're basically trying to work out how COVID would spread in an event situation. Based on that, so they ran 3 different versions of the same event using the same volunteers over the course of a day, using things like fluorescent dye to see where they touched, to see, you know, how it would spread in different scenarios. So some not socially distanced at all, with some social distance, with the regulations, to see whether or not events can be put on safely, with large scale events, with social distance measures, although we won't know the results of that still for at least a month, maybe, you know, maybe more. But the fact that was actually, I don't know if it was a government or an academic funded study, but that was something that that's happening in this country. So, but I think that information is going to benefit everybody in the world. Except China. Sounds like you guys are fine. Sounds like you guys don't need this, but you know, whatever. Like so I think that one thing, to go back to what Dtekk was saying about how this is going to sort of change the philosophy of the scene. One of the things that seems obvious, especially when we're talking about the difficulties with trying to coordinate with people in other territories and all the travel restrictions, seems to me that one of the obvious outcomes is there's more incentive to cultivate local scenes. How would that manifest? How would all of you are literally culture producers. You are people who are responsible for making culture happen in your respective cities. So I'm sure this is stuff you've been thinking about. Can each of you maybe briefly speak about how you're thinking about cultivating a local scene, if you're thinking about cultivating your local scene, and how?
I think for me, it's always been like an aim to cultivate local artists before anything else. Like international artists was always a second thought. I've always been interested in, I guess, booking more marginalized artists within my city and like the UK as a whole. But it's been difficult in that I had one club night planned, and that obviously got cancelled. With the club night, it's fully funded from my own personal, it's a DIY, very much just me behind the wheel type of thing. So, and I had to let down a lot of people in terms of not being able to pay some and offering who I can cancellation fees. It was a very personal thing, from graphic designers to venues to artists, to everyone involved in making a club night happen. Whereas when it came to like the festival format, which is a bit more funded by actual like an art organization that funds the festival for us, that was a little bit easier because they were able to help with like cancellation fees and stuff like that, which actually was a surprise to a lot of the locals, because we don't really operate on a contract basis. It's very much a case of like, you show up, you play, you get paid on the night, you might get 50% ahead of the gig. So I actually, is it Dtekk, sorry?
Yes.
What you said earlier about being a full-blown exercise in learning how to handle all that, that's what it was like for me as, I guess, a small promoter working within like a small club night that focuses on marginalized people, and then a festival that works on a boutique level. It was very much learning how to actually handle that and how to let people down, but also remain supportive of their financial situation. Yeah, it was a very personal thing for me. It wasn't so much about like letting a crowd down. It was more like, because it's a small thing, it's very much me knowing my community and having to speak to them on a personal level and figure out how to support them individually, rather than worrying about anything large scale. It's been different for me, definitely as like a smaller promoter, booker, programmer.
Yeah.
I think in my case it's even a smaller scale, because Białystok is not a city, it's more of a town, and we don't have much of a local scene when it comes to DJs, producers.
Right.
The strength of our scene is like the connection with Warsaw. I think that we are still quite close, and lots of people who are involved in art and the scene move to Warsaw. They come back to perform. And when I think about local scene and the COVID situation, I would really like to support more people from my town, to book them, to present them, and make as much of it as we can, but there are no people to book. And this is the situation that I'm in. I would really love to work on the scene, and there's this tragic situation, but there's also an opportunity to make it work, you know, to ask people to come to the club and use the equipment and learn something new, to attract them to this culture. But at the same side, they are not that interested because there's no place to be. The club used to be closed. Now we are operating as a music bar, which is actually this ingenious way of Polish people to circumvent the law, because we operate as a public, because pubs can be open, restaurants can be open, and people are gathering like in large numbers in these venues, but clubs have to stay closed.
Yeah.
And this is the hypocrisy of Polish situation, because there can be a crowd in a supermarket, there can be a crowd in a restaurant, in a pub where people are drunk. There is no social distancing, none at all.
Yeah.
But the clubs have to remain closed, and this is the problem. You know, in Warsaw there's like booming club club situation right now. The clubs are open and there's very little social distancing and control and anti-COVID measures. But in FOMO club, we limit the capacity to 30%. We ask people to wear masks, to disinfect hands. The whole staff is very careful, masks, gloves, and everything. And we even hang signs to asking people to refrain from dancing, but that's also it's really funny because people come to dance, but they try to maintain the social distance really. And the experiment works somehow, even though it's unofficial, I would say.
Right. Okay. I'd say what? But what about Go ahead.
Do you serve liquor actually?
Yes, yes, we do.
Because we in Germany we made the experience if people drink more than 2 beers, they lose control, you know, and then they give up distancing and everything.
Yes, we take it into account, and I would be a liar if I would tell you that this doesn't happen. Some people lose the distance. That's something that happens regularly. But the limited capacity and our awareness of it, our attitude that we allow people to come in, but try to make them aware that it's not safe to be close. It really works. There's no like close to distance like total all the time. People really think more, but the nights are really little. 50, 70, maybe 100 people maximum. So it's easily to maintain control. We are not talking about 200, 300 people in a club.
Shimpei, what about Tokyo? Tokyo is a massive city, and there's a lot of talent there. So are you guys at WWW, or I mean, both at WW Beta and for the live venues? Are you turning more towards your local talent?
I've been focusing on that more like local talents than other clubs. I mean,
you mean before the crisis, even
before the crisis, yeah, right, even the crisis, and because it depends. I think the club scene in Japan is like still like it depends on so many like international big artists.
Yeah.
And local artists is always like kind of left behind, like it was like second option. So now we have to focus on the local artists, but there's like many of the talents, but like kind of like we have to like now we are reaching at the stage like we have to like cultivate the new talents, like from like a younger generation, like at 20s. Right. We have a lot of talents in the 30s, like 40s, and we have like a long history, like compared to the other cities in Asia. So that is an advantage, but we still like need a lot of talents to cultivate from like new generations.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Well, no, I was just going to say to Ria that in New York, it sounds like you guys don't even have the opportunity to try anything out yet, even.
Yeah, there's not any opportunity to try things out, but New York is really fortunate because we have a really vibrant local scene with incredible artists. There's just tons of them. My big concern for reopening and starting to do events again is, especially for Vadis, which is a smaller event producer, we have always capitalized on agents for artists who are outside of the United States, booking several shows. They'll book their artists for a festival in a couple of other cities. And then we can work on flight shares and make the costs more manageable. And Vadis has always used that to include artists, like local artists on the lineup, and be able to pay them appropriately and give them money. And my concern is that economy is going to look really, really different. We've always supported local artists, done full lineups with local artists, but it's really nice to be able to book a larger talent and bring them in and give local artists an opportunity to be on that lineup and get the exposure and get paid well for doing the show. And that's going to have to be redone. New York we have huge expenses here. Venues have huge expenses. Venues tend to take a percentage of the door from the promoters. So the economy is definitely going to change, and we're going to have to figure it out. Because I have a feeling that we're going to have to cultivate the local scene for quite a while here.
Right. Yeah, that's gonna change and if quite a lot of promoters are feeling the same way all over the world, that's going to change the economies for all the artists everywhere.
Yeah.
Do you guys also feel as though but is there a sense that you're maybe more part of a community now than you were even before? Because in this whole thing about like a crisis bringing people together, like Gaz, you mentioned the festival that you were at last weekend, that was put on by Zhao Dai, and
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like Zhao Dai invited you guys all, and Elevator in Shanghai as well, and also Tag in Chengdu, and Oil in Shenzhen. That is the Chinese scene right there, in terms of like a certain group of clubs and promoters who have a like-minded interest. So
even though like the cities like Shanghai is so huge, 20 odd million people, the scene is still really small. So there's maybe 3 or 4 clubs in our area of music in Shanghai, and that's bigger than most of the cities. So I guess like it's difficult to have a varied lineup just with the DJs in one city. At the moment, it would just be repeating a lot of the same artists and stuff. So we're doing a lot of exchanges. So yeah, like you said, like Zhao Dai have only just recently opened a couple of weeks ago, but Oil in Shenzhen, there's Axis in Chengdu, Loopy. We've been doing a lot of club exchanges. So we'll send a lineup from Shanghai down to Shenzhen. Shenzhen will send one to Axis in Chengdu. And we've even been doing it within Shanghai. Like All and Elevator have been doing an exchange. So a typical All lineup will play Elevator, and an Elevator lineup will play All, just to kind of to vary the lineups and to support each other, basically.
That's amazing.
So it's definitely brought like the China scene more together, not just like the Shanghai scene, but like the China scene has got tighter, and we're supporting each other.
That's kind of exactly what I would have hoped to hear, if I'm honest. Like I can't say that I've heard that from any other country. Dimitri, is there a lot of crosstalk happening in Berlin between you and the other club owners, or?
Yeah, yes. You must see. When we started in the early '90s, we had like 3, 4, 5 venues and electric bars. Now we have like 200. So it's a different situation. Like in Shanghai, we have so many electronic kind of venues, bars, clubs, and we have some things have changed. Exclusivity for DJs and so. And this was a result of this competition, but in the last years. But now there's new thinking. We watch out more for the residents living in Berlin. We really give up flying in very expensive DJs. We never made any money on the door. It was just a turnover. 50% of all income of the Tresor Club went straight out to the fees and flight costs and production costs. We just survived from the bar. But I must say, now we talk to some people. We have in Berlin, because we have so many venues, we are organized. We have a kind of a commission, a club commission, So we exchange ideas, and this club commission, that every club gives maybe $50 a month, and they pay some people, some employees, but they help, because the mayor of Berlin just wants to talk to one voice, not with every club owner,
Right.
So, but we reached a lot, we reached about tax problems, smoking areas, you know, loudness problems. We have the Senate of Berlin gave us $1 million just for noise protection, you know, for outside, if clubs have problems with that. But now, I mean, clubs, it looks that many have to give up, you know. And when they have to give up, when the venue is gone, the club is gone, you know, and they will never will come back. This is a serious situation now. We have some support by the city, but I don't know how it looks by end of the year, you know, how many clubs maybe have lost everything, you know, because most of them make no money. Some do with a park outside, a beer garden or so, but it looks quite serious. People do not talk about it, but it looks serious. I know more. And yeah, and it's even our club, we lose also a lot, you know, every month, and we did this at least 20,000 euros, you know, because we have to pay the rent, we have to pay insurances, and we have to pay this and that and small things, you know, and all loans. And this is a serious problem for many clubs. I don't know, we have to face reality by January, and then we see maybe 50% of all clubs gone from Berlin. It will come overnight. Nobody wants to talk about it, you know. And but it's a serious situation here. We have, I believe, if you can make it maybe another 12 months, if you can survive another 12 months, life looks better. But at the moment, it's getting hard because most of the clubs never had like money that they kept in the back, you know, like some positive money. They just lived from 1 month to the other, from one day to the other, you know. And the big problem we have in Berlin is, that's very sad, because we have a lot of small startups like cafes, galleries, you know, small hostels. We all work somehow together, but they all have no money to survive, you know. The city gives them some dollars and some money, but I don't know if this works out, you know. And on the other side, there are big speculators, you know, real estaters who look on the space and want to grab it. So we don't know yet, but I know a little bit how, you know, from some clubs or some restaurant, and it's so sad. They have to give up, you know, the small cells, you know. In Berlin, you must understand everything is walkable, you know. You can go from there. You don't, sometimes maybe you need, we have a fantastic traffic situation, or how you say, underground tube buses, and it's very close, everything, all the venues, but it will, the face of Berlin will change definitely by beginning of next year. And,
okay, well, that's terrifying.
And there will be only a few clubs. They might. I don't know how is it in your countries, you know, and also kind of a responsibility of club owners, you know. They do not open if they not really know it's safe. We have some quite many in the last months. We have seen many illegal parties in the parks. They just go in the parks by night. There was a party, I mean, Lisa, you heard about? 5,000 people, you know. Police comes out and did not know what to do, you know, in a public park. And the young
one in the middle of the
care.
city too. That's what I thought was really weird. I couldn't believe they did it in the middle of the city. Why didn't they do it on the outskirts?
People want to dance, and this. Yeah, and this is happening, but it's dangerous, you know. It's dangerous. So when you had a super spreader, you know, and the guy came out of a club or so, the club scene has a problem, you know. So this is the situation. I really hope we get this quick testing. We get this situation that we can do something, and it's affordable for all the venues. But in the moment, the economic situation is very, very dangerous for most of the clubs, restaurants, galleries, hostels, you know, small taxi drivers, you know, and all the small agencies, you know, who cared about clubs. I mean, Lisa, I don't know how you work, but it's difficult to survive.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
I mean, I guess in Shanghai or in China, like there was no support from the government at all. There was no money for this industry, but because the scene is so small, there's only a couple of clubs, maybe only one club per city. there's quite a tight community around that club. So a lot of the clubs did kind of crowdfunding or like stuff to raise money. All did. Like at the end of April, we were out of money totally. Like 4 months with no income. So we kind of got all the promoters together to do something, and we're also selling T-shirts and doing other things to kind of raise some money. And the community came together and kind of saved us. And the same thing happened with Jiaodai in Beijing. The same thing happened with oil in Shenzhen. But I guess that's easier to do when there's only 1 or 2 clubs in the city. If it's Berlin and there's 200, if like not everyone can have that community and raise that much money, each of them. So there's, yeah.
Well, I think the big question from this conversation is what is the scene? What does scene mean to any of you? This a crisis like this really starts to bring that question to the fore. Like, who are you going to support? Who's going to support you? And what does that mean? And not only that, but also the necessity of physical space for any scene. And how it's actually like, it's in as much as the internet is wonderful and it connects us, and there's so many opportunities that come from that, and also other scenes do arise via that way. I don't know that it can replace an actual physical scene and a physical space where music can happen and actually people can be together at the same time. So have any of you come to any conclusions about what is your scene? I think Gaz, like your example is very clear. Like this is that's very clear cut. I think you guys are lucky in that regard, because there's been a lot of mutual support from the sound of it, and there's very little competition. But actually, I was very surprised when you said that you and Elevator were working together, because you're both in the same city.
Yeah.
But you're also doing different genres, so that makes it easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, true. I guess. But it is a very supportive scene. I think there's not much kind of aggressive competition.
I mean, Shimpei, like what's happening in Tokyo? Do you think that the scene is banding together? I mean, there's obviously, like, I know that the promoters at other clubs, and I know you guys talk. So do you think that there's an element of cooperation going to happen, or?
I mean, I think the scene is like getting like matured, but also like this is like population age is a problem. We have like a lot of like talents from like 30s and 40s, like who started like DJs like in the 90s, but like younger generation is like the scene is like so weak,
right?
Like so I kind of like, when I look at like scene like in Shanghai or like China, like doing like exchange things, like is a kind of like I think that's good idea to do that here, like amongst like the younger crowds, like new generations. Otherwise, I think it's hard to. I think that the scene, especially in Tokyo, is like kind of like separated by the generations. That is kind of like a.
So there's already this like, inbuilt age gap.
Yeah, but true. That is something I want to like connect, but also like strong, make like younger generation stronger.
Yeah.
And then and also like if I see as a Tokyo as a part of like Asian city, like in the whole club scene, I think that's quite interesting, because like in China, where Shanghai scene is like quite younger and new, but we have like a generations, and so if I connect like them all together, then that's like I think I can make something like interesting thing happening.
Well, that would be great. I know that's something that you've been working on already, that's already been a project for you. Beta, with WW Beta.
Later.
Yeah. So so that's, if maybe something good can come of that. But but you know, the bigger question is I think that in the wider discussion, we are always talking about community. In the, you know, in music, people are always talking about community, and this pandemic just really drives home the question, like, what is community? Like, who is your community? What are you doing for your community? Or what is like, how is your community actually operating? And it's interesting to hear Dimitri talk about the Berlin Club Commission. I didn't realize that that was an initiative that was actually a cooperative of of many different clubs in Berlin put together. That is actually organizing. That's the next step when there are lots of different clubs and there is a certain amount of inbuilt competition, but that's organizing together to form your own lobby, to lobby the government. And that was clearly effective, because although, like, I think that Berlin is unusual in that the city government already recognizes how important the nightlife economy is to the city. So I don't know if that's something that would work in New York, for instance.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, in lieu of being able to connect with the artists and the audience, the venues in New York have come together. They created the New York Independent Venue Association, which is engaged in lobbying and fundraising and just going through bureaucratic red tape, and also just sharing information about what the SLA inspections have been looking like, what to expect. And it's been a really great resource. But in addition to that, just having worked at so many venues and knowing venue owners, it's been really nice to be able to connect with them on Zoom and see that everybody's okay, and, you know, just trying to survive and sharing information. It's been really good, actually, and unexpected. Yeah.
That is that. So there is a certain amount of bringing people together. This shared misery.
Yeah.
But going back to something that Dimitri said, how in times like this, how does an organization like a club balance the economic and artistic and hygienic safety responsibility to the public? So, for instance, I was told that in Kiev, even though the Ukrainian government relaxed restrictions, one club in Kiev chose not to reopen because they thought that it was unsafe. And that, I think a lot of organizations would choose to adhere to whatever the government lays out. But especially when you're in a situation like in America, where the government's not being that helpful, and sometimes they're being downright misleading, I would say. It's so, there's a lot of these are the sort of choices that you as organizers of events that draw people together have to think about. So how are you thinking about these responsibilities? What's foremost? I think Dtekk, Jacek said that you were that your venue was one of the venues in Poland that he thought was actually taking this responsibility seriously. That even though you were running events, but that you were actually doing this in a serious way.
Yeah, we're not trying to attract too many people, just staying afloat, and this is this economic element, but we still communicate with our community and make them realize that it's not that we're not opening only for fun, that there's this responsibility involved, that we're all responsible for each other. That's why our security reminds people to wear masks. We remind them about the sanitary measures, etc., and thus the limitations. We don't allow that many people that want to get inside. Actually, we have to limit it. And last month we opened only twice. So not to make it so regular, because there was a surge in new cases, but our region actually is relatively safe when it comes to COVID. We have only like a few 3, 5, 6 cases, new cases a day. So in the whole region, I'm not saying about I'm talking about the whole town. Only the town, it's the whole region. So
Right.
So it's relatively safe. It's not Warsaw. It's not any other big capital. But yeah, we decided to open to support our people, support our staff, because it's also something we need to think about. You know, our staff, our employees.
And also the public actually do need an outlet. Speaking as a member of the public, I feel like, you know, I would, if we had remained in a lockdown situation for longer than we did, I felt like I was going crazy as someone who lives alone. So
yes, during the lockdown, people went really haywire. We organized a few live streams from the club, and people were really supportive, you know, making donations, and we even sold tokens from our cloakroom, and people bought them to support the club.
That's
that
amazing.
had been run only for 6 weeks. This is really a fresh thing. We overtook an older club that had been run for 23 years in this space, but the community is with us, and they really supported us. So this is my scene, you know, the scene that I'm really dedicated to fight for. But at the same time, I see how this community fades away if you do nothing and just wait. That's why we decided to open. This is also a really major factor in the decision. Although I think it's some people think it's questionable, like this question with serving liquor from Dimitri. I totally understand. That's why we decided to be very, very serious about maintaining the distance and this the security of the situation.
I think that but one question I have is, can any organization stay afloat operating at 30% capacity?
No, but you can still pay for artists, for you know, bar staff. We don't have any money for the rent, actually, so we're way behind with our rent.
Right. Okay.
So yeah.
I mean, but
still in crisis.
And the other thing about, if legal clubs are shut, then there's a lot of illegal events happening. I don't know if you guys saw recently, but apparently there was a rave in a bunker in Oslo, and 27 people got carbon monoxide poisoning there.
In a bunker?
In Oslo.
Could come up with less safe space for this time of the pandemic than the bunker, I think.
Right. So they apparently had generators running, and that's what created the carbon monoxide problem. So 27 people were hospitalized as a result. So that's, you know, that's actually an argument to allow legal events to happen, especially in a safe way. Papas, can we see the video number 1? So this is actually from the 22nd of May, and this was the first socially distanced party club event in Germany after lockdown. And you can see that there are circles on the floor where you know everyone's wearing a mask. There's assigned spaces for people to dance so that it remains socially distanced. That's Gareth on the decks, by the way. This happened in Munster. This also cost 70 euros. The ticket price was 70 euros for this. So it was a bit of an experiment, but I don't know if that's the future of clubbing. I hope not, but
no, I hope, bloody hell, I hope not. Jeez, that's so bad. I'm so glad I got called out for that, because that's unacceptable. There's nothing remotely underground or inclusive, or no one working class is able to pay 70 euros to go see. Who is it?
Agreed. Well, it was Gareth. I mean, they did that so that they could make sure that they could pay the rent or whatever. You know, there are economic arguments for them to have done that. But yes, agreed. Like, obviously, it excludes a whole number of people, and they acknowledge that actually in the statement afterwards. But it was an experiment. That was like, if you're having to do this at a minimum capacity. So yes. So then we run into a whole nother slew of problems if you try to make the economics of this work. but yeah, when we're talking about what are our responsibilities to, oh, actually, Papas, let's see the picture, the JPEG. This is the. Can we just see the image, the still image, please?
Sorry.
Papas? This picture is the one of the DJ and the big crowd. Well, it's not really a big crowd, it's a socially distanced crowd actually. But from the DJ's from the DJ's perspective, the JPEG, or it's a PNG actually. You had it in the test.
Who?
Oh, Papas, can you hear me? Okay, well, whatever. Anyway, I'll show you this picture later. But okay. we think.
I want to maybe.
Yeah.
Lisa,
yeah.
I have maybe one thing I forgot, but
yes,
2
points.
Please. One point is the club commission. The club commission realized a chat room, with all promoters when we talk about community. So if one promoter knows something, a club owner, a club promoter, he puts it in the chat room and the others answer or ask or whatever, So this works quite well, Not everybody has access to it. You must ask at the club commission and then you get access to it. And this is a really good, positive, creative communication system, because some people find out there's a funding from the state, for the rent or for whatever, because we're talking about not just clubs, also about theaters and so. And this is a really good system. And the other system we work on, and it looks quite successful, that we tried, if you run a club that is well curated, with international DJs, international artists, good artists, new music, then you have a serious chance to become respected as a cultural institution,
Yeah.
That because it is similar, they put you on the same level like a theater, for instance. A theater tries also to do the best good program, a theater director. And if you have a great booker, who's doing a good program, so they put you on the same level. Very positive development for some clubs, If you have a club that plays every weekend the same DJ, that's not so interesting. But if you have a well curated program, then you have a chance to get that you get this respect, that you get respected as a cultural institution, and that you get funding from the state regularly, So they handle you they treat you like a theater, that is funded. That is a positive development in Germany.
I see Sarah wishing she lived in Berlin right now. I suspect that this is a privilege that we have in Germany that many other people will not have. But yes, agreed. That's something that could be. It's like, look, this is personally, I would advocate this. Everybody make your lineups better. But this is.
But I think it's a result. The result of the small steps, like we did this United We Scream, all the clubs screamed, and we worked with a TV station together, and some clubs, everybody wanted to be in the TV, but some clubs were not so. But in the very end, it developed a big attention, for the situation of the clubs in Germany, and then some companies from the drink companies supported it with like 500 with 100,000 and put it into this non-profit organization who collect all these donations, from people donated a lot, and in the end, the politicians start talking about the situation. So it was a beginning, this United We Scream, So I think it is always a process, It does not happen overnight. That the state says, okay, we give you money. No,
That's
they
true.
saw it in the TVs. They saw everybody was talking about, and they, in the city of Berlin, understood that this is also an economy, you know, for the city. That's very
Yeah.
about the nighttime economy for the night, and it's Berlin so attractive. So they could not ignore. They could not ignore it, you know, the situation, and so they try to keep some venues alive. Or this is also a result. I don't know if it works out, but without this help, many clubs would have given up already.
Agreed. I mean, without the help from the city and the state, I sorry, I just apologize to Ria and Sarah and Gaz and Shimpei and basically everybody else who doesn't have this privilege of like actual support from the state. But let's go back. I just want to show you guys this this picture from a rave that happened in the northeast of England recently. This is from this is a picture that was published just on the 26th of August. Photo credit Morgan Bennett and Thomas Jackson from Mixmag of a review of a socially distanced rave in the northeast of England. And so you see that there's actually 2,500 people there, but that's an arena-sized space. And you see how there's people basically have their own little private pens. So so that's where you can congregate with the people that you are safe with, your bubble. And then outside of that, what do you guys think of that? Do you think that could work? How does that look?
I'm interested to know who played that, because you'd have to have, I guess, a bigger name to attract such a big crowd to begin with. You'd have to be quite a well-funded promoter with a bank account, like so. I'm intrigued to see who would be able to put that together. Like, production alone would just be insane.
Yeah.
Building a barricade for absolutely every single group of people that are coming in.
You're right on all those accounts. I can tell you the name of the artist, but I've never heard of this person. So Patrick Topping.
Okay, so another like huge white male DJ again, like would sell a big crowd like that. It's not really my thing. So again, it's a very specific thing of someone who's already at a level that's beyond quite a lot of us. Accessible as hell. Again, like it's pointing out a very clear divide to me, and it's those that are able to survive for a reason.
Yeah. That is one thing that the pandemic is exacerbating, is the divide. I'm not really sure what the answer is to that. I think that
redistribute wealth, perhaps. Support of grassroots.
Vote leftist, everybody. But that's gonna take a while. That's definitely gonna take a while. I mean, I suppose when Scotland secedes, then maybe you'll have a fighting chance at that. I mean, I do think that everybody on the panel is coming from a distinctly underground philosophy, even if Dimitri has been doing this a long ass time and has bigger events as well. But yeah, I think that we can all agree with that. But yes, but talking about going back to responsibilities to other people, have you guys seen the Business Techno account on Twitter?
Yes.
I guess okay, Papas, let's see the Business Techno Twitter account. So basically, this is an account that is calling out mostly DJs that play events. And if we can see that specific thread. Yeah, here's the one. Okay, so I guess this person is called Solardo, who I've never heard of. And Solardo played Croatia in August. And then you can see that Business Techno is also correlating what the COVID numbers are in Croatia. According to date, you can see the video of the party in Croatia where it's not socially distanced and no one's wearing a mask. And then the final is well, it looks like it correlates strongly with the date of the party and a rise in COVID. So but I'm just this is again going back to the what are our responsibilities to other people. So if you're allowed to put on parties, which clearly that party was legal. It must have been. Should you? I guess that depends a lot on what the situation is. In China, yeah, by all means. Sounds like China's doing fine. So
Polish situation
Bialystok
sounds
fine.
It sounds really fine in comparison. Even other regions in Poland, it's the numbers are really low. We are in the middle of the festival, and the festival takes measures to be as safe as it can be. Someone just texted me that on the concert of the biggest rap artist we have tonight, everyone is wearing masks. This was our biggest problem, that we thought that younger people who are into rap music won't respect the measures, but they do, and it all looks really safe. And in comparison, the Polish situation is better than other European countries. Although there's been quite a surge in numbers, there are still much lower than in other countries. There's also a question of how many tests we have been running on people, because there are less tests than, for example, in Germany.
Right.
But we are allowed to throw outdoor events. Then they have been organized, and apart from really a few cases, the COVID spread was correlated with wedding parties than concerts or an outdoor raves, etc., because on wedding parties we don't maintain social distancing clearly. So yeah, that's the situation in Poland. And as a festival organizer, I don't feel bad in morally that we throw the festival, because we are really taking measures even bigger than the government imposes on us.
Yeah, it's a tricky line. It's a tricky line. So and you want to support the community, you want to support the artists, you want to actually get back to your actual jobs. But there's a responsibility to the public as well in another way. So
yeah, it's just to add something to it. We just canceled one rap name because we got to know that this artist was in contact with one person last week that had corona. So we canceled the artist. This is that serious. We take it really seriously. So no risks.
Well, I mean, but going back to the idea of how the smallest organizations are the ones that are at most risk. The ones with the least amount of money, and what is going to happen to culture when it's reduced to survival of the fittest?
I don't even want to imagine.
I was thinking about what Gaz was saying in terms of like funding, and how it's very much if you're an established cultural institution, as you've discovered, although to me the smaller ones are the heartbeat of the dance electronic music scene. They matter to me, to most. That's just for me. So I think it's interesting to me. It's like all the funding that I've seen, or the support that I've seen, has been to already established institutions. And if you like, recently there was a fund introduced to help establish venues. Mm-hmm. There's ones, even if you're an artist, you're able to apply for financial help and support, but I feel like promoters aren't really considered, especially if you're independent, in terms of like getting included in this thing. No one seems to have considered promoters, and I think that's something I've been really frustrated about. And then when you think, or even like booking agencies that aren't necessarily on papers as such. I've just been thinking about that a lot, and then also even when it comes to like asking for help, I've been thinking a lot about people like Disco Min, or even myself, when I've posted asking for helping with raising money. It was very much a thing of like people telling you not to ask for that, not to ask for funding and not to ask for help. And then also the other side of it, and I think you should be allowed to ask for help if you're like in need of support from your community. But then the other side to that is, for me specifically, a lot of people in my community aren't actually able to, like, they're already claiming universal credit or help from the government to like even pay rent. So I never felt comfortable actually asking my community to then fund a party. We're already dealing with so much, especially actually, I don't know, we haven't talked about it, but the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been so much going on aside of all this.
Yeah.
Affected everyone so deeply. It just hasn't felt right to ask people for their money when they're already like drowning. It just hasn't felt right at all. So it's just been, for me, it's been very much about supporting on a personal level and making sure that everyone's like doing okay mentally, and like has a roof over their head. It's been that level for me. Yeah.
This is the thing. This is about finding it's really forcing you to figure out who your community is, and and the personal community is just as important as the professional one. So that's,
well, it's both personal and professional. It's folk that you put on when they first start out. You know, they build a career alongside you. Eventually, they become international and come back and play for you. It's a long family thing. It's just, yeah, it's a long history that you build with these people. So and especially for me, I work primarily with like folk from marginalized communities, be it from working class communities or Black and brown folk or femme or queer or trans or whatever. So I feel like it's hit those communities the most for me. And it's been really difficult trying to make sure that we're just staying afloat.
Yeah, that's, I actually, one thing, Dimitri, maybe you could talk about, I thought that actually you did a pretty good job and over the long tail of your career of giving back to the community that helped make you successful. Meaning, I'm talking about like the Detroit artists and all of that. And you made it a point to give back. And I think that's something that a lot of people could actually learn a lesson from. So was that something you were really conscious of, is like you had some success there and you had to give it back?
Yeah, I think with Detroit, you know, the deal was simple. They gave us the music and I gave them experience about structure, how to structure something, you know. But if you ever been in Detroit, I've been there many times. They have a similar situation like Berlin before the wall came down, and I must say most of the people or also record companies try to pull out something out of Detroit, you know, the music, you know. And the chief of underground resistance, Mike Banks, he said, what is our advantage? What do you give to Detroit? So, you know, and we came to a point and we put some money together and we bought 2 houses there where we built up like a school, a music school now, you know, and that Mike is running in Regie. So we left the money in Detroit, we made here in Europe, we gave it back, you know, and that has built a really deep relation. And what we also did was a community called the Detroit-Berlin Connection. So I had access to the government, I could talk to the mayor, and I could convince them that about nighttime economy, that there is also a business in the night, you know, because they have a very hard curfew. At 1 o'clock, you have your last order, something like that. And I invited them all to Berlin, and they came, some of the city council, and they realized what's going on in Berlin, that the crime rate is really low and so. And then I was back in Berlin, in Detroit, and we do every year kind of a conference called The Potential, you know, what is possible in Detroit. So what we reached is that we have like a night ambassador, you know, somebody who cares, you know, somebody between the politics, the government, and between the artists or the labels or the promoters. And this is a beginning. And we also work on an art zone, a zoned area where the clubs can open till 6, but they have to stop to sell liquor at 3 or so, 4. And but the people can stay and dance, you know. This is also interesting. It's brand new for Detroit. And yeah, I mean, these all happen only in small steps, in small steps. You know? But people now understand when I brought the study of the Berlin Club Commission that Berlin makes a year because there are a lot of clubs, and the clubs attract many tourists coming to Berlin, and they go out, they go to hotels, take a plane, take taxis, and so we make a turnover of 1.5 billion, 1.5 billion euros, and the club scene is responsible for it because all the many visitors of the clubs in the night develop great ideas and they want to participate, they want to join this movement, and the next day they start a small business like a gallery or like a coffee, and these numbers, about this turnover, the club commission made a study about it. I could transfer this study. You can read it in English also. It's on clubcommission.de. You can read the study, German, English, and then the eyes of the politicians were shining and said, "Wow, there's money in the night," and that was really a point to convince them to take them on a trip, and say, "Okay, let's do something," because for me, Detroit is the mecca of the music in America. Everything happened there for me, not just the techno thing, everything else. And they don't use this acid, they don't not even know the acid. They only know Motown. And so this is, I think this is a very important step for different cities, that the people who run the city, like the mayors, need people who keep the city weird. If something is very white and everything looks beautiful, the city does not function. They need a weird area or venues, or like even if it's one lighthouse, like we had in the last years. Berlin has seen the Berghain, but Berghain, imagine, became so popular that people all in the world talked about there is something we do not have. There is party without ending, there is drugs, sex, everything is possible, and this is. It sounds a bit funny, but this was one of the points people came, to maybe to see Berghain, and then. But anyway, when they were in Berlin, they discovered the city of Berlin, and that was really good. It was. You must see. Even Tresor had the visitors. 85% did not speak German anymore. They came from all over the world, and since a few years we also have the industry for electronic music. They're like companies like Ableton or Native Instrument develop softwares. We have Resident Advisor. We have SoundCloud. We have different companies. They based in Berlin, and but this was also a result because the club world did function so heavily. And if this collapse now, you can understand the city tries harder to keep it alive somehow, but if this collapses, this structure, this is a bad problem. And for Detroit, actually we could bring a lot of experiences to Detroit. My strategy is always to compare cities, and I ask, we have something, maybe you do not have this, or you have something, we don't have that, and so we come to results. And on this conference, potential is an open conference. Maybe we could do one in Warsaw one day, or somewhere in Tokyo, and we could talk about the potential, what is doable, what is realistic, and I'm looking forward, because we started to create more alliances between different art forms, not just music, also about light artists, about let's say about art, fashion, and so. And I think this is the future, to cooperate with different art forms. Yeah.
This is. I think that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I think that this is one of the most important points.
Yeah, I think maybe the last point I want to say is the experience I made looking back the last 30 years, from when we started Tresor, what stays, and then I think what stays is the experience that says, give young people space and say yes, let it happen, and this is a very important experience I made, because this was the situation in Berlin. There was no control for 4 or 5 years, and there was a lot of space, and people were very excited. A really good atmosphere, no curfew anyway since 70 years, and you see it changed completely the DNA of Berlin, the image, everything. The image of the city of Berlin is completely different. Also the love rate, looking back the first years. And this experience give young people space to experiment and say yes, even doesn't matter what comes out. This is an advice I try to make it with a project called Happy Locals. So I go into small cities, 10,000 people, and tell the mayors before the people, the good, intelligent young people migrate, to Berlin, because there is no stage, no space where they can develop their ideas. Give them space, all supermarkets, all empty ruins. They want to fix the space so that otherwise the right movement over. It's a political situation so that culture can be can fight back, and can be an orientation for young people. I think young people for me still till 16 till 40, and they need space, physical space. That's very important, and under a self-administration, and this works actually. I consulted like 10, 15 cities, small cities, and they have like independent youth houses now, where they have some bands playing, or they speak about economics, some sprayers say, hey, what can I do? I don't know. And I say, yeah, you make the posters for the promotion, for the marketing of your city. What, me? Yes, you get it. You get 100 euros for it. Wow. And then you give a hope, and you encourage young people, and this is a very important thing that comes out of this club experience also, give this kind of information, know-how transfer, I call it, back to these people who really need it in the countryside, But this is the way, we have to be aware that we all do a job in a niche, it's a niche.
Yeah.
It's not the mainstream, but it's a protected space. Yeah.
I think that
so this is my
yeah. There's some very good lessons here. One, you talked about the importance of communication, which is partly why we're having this talk now, about like people talking to each other, sharing information. Another is the importance of physical spaces. Obviously the long tail, the fatalistic long tail view is that thanks to COVID, there's probably going to be a lot of space available soon, because a lot of people are going to be leaving cities and a lot of businesses are shutting down. So maybe afterwards there'll be some regeneration, because there'll be a lot of space. I just want to share with you that we have a comment from someone on Facebook that says, I don't think there are many governments out there in the world who consider the electronic dance music scene as culture, sadly. Not to mention the more conservative governments potentially find us as a subversive environment, and they probably are glad we're hurting at the moment, which is probably true. So, but I think that because it's almost 3 a.m. in Tokyo, sorry, Shim, but we're gonna wrap up soon. I want to see if anybody out there has any questions that they would like to ask the panelists. You do actually have access here to some pretty influential people who work behind the scenes that you don't often get to talk to. And if anyone has any questions, that they should do that now. They should ask these people, especially they come from all over the world, and they're working in very rather influential positions. So raise your hand up if you are actually in the call, so that the producer can see it, and then we can call on you. So let us know. But in the meantime, if we can see if any of these, okay, someone's got their hand up. Jacek, talk to us. Can Jacek be added to the call? Cool. Here he is. I'm sure that this is going to be a good question. Just to say that thank you guys. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me and talk to us, and the rest of the world. This is not an easy thing to talk about. I'm low-key commiserating right now as well, which, you know, there's definitely some benefit in that. And it's crazy to think that it still blows my mind that like this is happening to all of us everywhere. But now I want to move to China. Although I suspect there's reasons why things are going so well there. Probably has to do with a government that's got a lot more control than the
Exactly.
So, you know, it's give and take. And we, you know, I do realize that in Berlin, at least, we have privilege in that we do actually have open air events that are legal even. Although, well, you know, as the weather turns, who knows what's going to happen. But Dimitri, I am 100% backing your quick testing method. That to me sounds like it could be a solution.
Oh.
Is it? We can't see or hear Jacek, by the way. So I don't know if he just wants to put it in the chat.
Hang on.
I'm not sure. Papas, what do you think? Do any of you have any final comments that you'd like to say or share or ask?
For me, I guess just listening to Dimitri talk, because I guess that's where I'm headed in 30 years, I hope. It's been really, really cool. And honestly, if you ever want to come to Glasgow and speak to our government, you are more than welcome to do that, because everything sounds so inspiring and just so something to look forward to for sure, and like try and put into action. It's been really, really cool to hear you talk.
Yeah, I mean, Glasgow is actually a pretty interesting clubbing town too, with a long history. Oh, hey, Jacek, talk to us.
Sorry, I had some technical issues. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for interrupting. Sarah, you please finish. I didn't want to. Yeah. So if I can add something, I think it's really crucial to have this conversation at the moment, not only because of what you're saying, but also because the sole fact of how important it seems the club scene actually is, not only in a positive sense, but also, you know, thinking about all the negative outcome that is resulting from the work that some people put in to have raves, to have plague raves even, and that kind of like to get back to Dimitri's point. I think, yes, it's important to keep the city weird, but at the same time, we have to remember that sometimes we are in charge of the narrative that's actually based around COVID, and that there are certain things that we promote that affect the whole society. And I think this moment in time is probably reflecting a situation in which club owners can have the most effect on society. I would maybe point out or single out 3 elements of possible negative input that we can have as a club scene or a society. First of all, is the exclusion itself. The fact that we are holding parties in situations like this not only affect, you know, the people that can become infected, but also, you know, we are basically giving up on people that have coexisting, how do you call that, conditions, people that are, you know, struggling mentally and do not want to see people at a given time, and people who are like above 30 or 35, we're basically saying, you know, we just want to have fun without you. So that's one thing. Then I think what's really crucial and what's not being really talked about loudly is the kind of a rejection of the concept of consent that is happening because of COVID. I think it can have a long-lasting effect, reaching to like other areas of clubbing, if we accept the fact that we can spread the disease the same way we can in fact accept other types of trespassing into other people's sphere. For example, when it comes to the presence of people or different gender than mine, and different race or ethnicity, because we just won't have if we can deal with infecting somebody, then we can also deal with having somebody who's like harassing or who is like racist in a venue, because we just want to stay together at whatever costs. So that's something that's pretty bugging me. And then the third part that's also crucial, I think, is how the blame is spread after we have like a contagious event in a club, because obviously it will happen on a larger party. It will happen more likely at a commercial party or the party that is aimed at a wider group of people. But in the end, at least over here in Poland, I think the people that are going to be blamed will probably members of minorities, because of how this political constellation kind of works over here. It will definitely at some point reach people that are LGBT, and it can also result in like example of like racist behavior towards people that are usually labeled in countries, in European countries, in America as well, as the people who are more prone to the disease itself. And I think we really have to, remember to hold those people to account, the people that decide on what the COVID narrative in the Global is. We have to we can't just go like happy-go-lucky when somebody in any given country like achieves to have a situation in which the party is already going, because like this whole situation when somebody's successful cannot be enough. Like we have to remember that running a club night doesn't make sense just for the sake of having a good time overnight. We have to remember that it has a wide-reaching consequences on basically on who holds the power and who holds the narrative. And I think that's really crucial. And I don't know, maybe it's radical, but I just want to put it out there. And yeah, I would like to hear maybe what Sarra has to say about it, because I think like Scotland seems like a place full of promoters that are involved, and like especially given the situation around this club in Glasgow that was trying to corona wash itself. Yeah, I just wanna hear what are your thoughts on that, on power in context of COVID.
I think you've made some really good points, especially about. I was reading, I think it was on Twitter. They were talking about how a lot of the raves happening in places like France, for example, were happening in areas where it was a lot of Black and brown folk where they live. And considering that a lot of countries within Europe and the UK have, like, Black and brown folk are more likely to get affected by COVID for various reasons, access, like the type of jobs we take on, whatever it is, there's multiple reasons for that. It's frustrating to know that obviously it's become quite careless in some situations, and it has a detrimental effect on these communities. And I guess if you are considered a big name and you're putting on these kind of events in communities where you could cause a lot of harm, you're literally putting people's life at risk. I think you need to talk to your community more and stop just chasing the money. I've seen a lot of these events, like even the videos that you shared, Lisa, where usually established DJs, they're already like, I'm not sure what they're doing it for. Is it for the joy factor? And I don't know how, like, we've already, I feel like we've established that physical space is so important, and having like these communities come together is so important. So if you're missing that, you're limiting it to like 20, 30 people. And then on top of that, you're already having an established name that isn't necessarily in need of this gig financially. There's a lot of questions that come into it, and I don't know if these are being discussed on a bigger platform rather than just like on Twitter or like folk most affected by it. I feel like it's mostly marginalized folk that are discussing these topics, which is quite sad, because it should definitely be the more established names and the ones putting on these parties that are having these discussions in a meaningful way that's inclusive of communities that are most affected. That's what I think on it. In terms of Glasgow, honestly, I keep to myself. I'm doing a very specific job for my community, Black and brown folk, LGBTQ plus folk and working class folk. It's not been an easy ride to provide these spaces, and honestly, I don't really want to comment on huge platforms that could or couldn't, like might or might not be causing harm, because I think it's up to them to check themselves. It's not a labor I'm willing to take on anymore.
Yeah.
Is where I'm at. It's exhausting. Yeah, they need to check themselves if they are causing harm in any way, in terms of like, using COVID to, do whatever isn't right, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how to put it across, but yeah, it's just labor I'm not willing to take on anymore because I did it for so long.
That's fair enough. Okay, we got several questions come in from the various streams going on. So this from Chris Tolick. He says that, say that a vaccine comes sooner rather than later and the world returns to normal, what do you plan to do differently in your spaces in a post-pandemic world? Anybody want to tackle that one?
I feel like we're still kind of grappling with how to handle club life with the pandemic. It's really hard to say what we would do differently until we find out what is really effective.
Yeah.
But I would say, and it was mentioned here already, that a lot of venues just kind of live month to month. And I think that there's a real need to start thinking about long-term future and socking away, a slush fund for situations like this, because what we've seen is, throughout the world, a lot of governments are not stepping up to help at all in any way. We are an afterthought, in spite of all the benefits that we bring culturally and economically to cities. That's huge. That's huge to not be operating so much on the margin.
Anybody else? That's very valid, that it takes a lot of processing power just to deal with what's happening right now, much less thinking about the future.
Yeah.
But okay, so from James Woodmaska, he asks, what can we do as club goers to support what the scene is going through locally and globally, besides giving money that will help build and support these communities going forward, especially in the US where this may be going on for longer? So this is basically someone asking, what can they do other than give money?
I'm thinking about, like, as a promoter and a curator and a programmer, alongside all these things, I do occasionally DJ. I guess I'm thinking more of an artist approach, lending mixes. I usually say no, but I did a couple of mixes for a couple of platforms that were raising money. I feel like there's, I guess, ways that aren't necessarily financial to support your platform. It could be sharing it with your friends. It could be highlighting the artists they feature. I'm thinking of like tangible, like more like support that isn't necessarily financial. And that's, I guess, that falls back on the creative side of things, which is just supporting everyone that's involved in the organization some other way.
Yeah. And Gaz, it looks like you were about to say something. You have a thought.
I'm thinking. I've not got anything yet.
Okay. I also, another thing, what you and Jacek were discussing, it sounds like one way that people could help the scene is to think about trying to make it more inclusive, like various ways that they, as individual club goers or individual members of the scene, who maybe aren't directly related with putting on nights, but how they could actually, be a more active force in that way. Does anyone else want to address this question? Although we can come back to it because there's a couple more.
Yeah, but I mean, I would like to say that I think that especially in New York, there's a lot more excitement and interest generated when artists are brought in from other parts of the world. And I find that as a promoter, as you know, as a venue operator, it's difficult to generate the interest and the attendance in the local artists. But you know, support in that area not only supports the promoter and the venue, but also supports the local artists. And you know, it could lead to a more kind of community feel, like, you know, I'm going to see this artist, I know them, I've seen them around, I've seen them in clubs, I'm here to support, I'm here to support the venue that I love, I'm here to support the promoter. I think a lot of times in New York, it feels like, especially on social media, that the hype is always about the headliner. And it would be great if the audience could kind of return love for venues and promoters and the local artists. Because I think that when New York does reopen, that's our world. That's going to be our world for a while.
Yeah, you're probably right. So maybe that means that quite a lot of the people are just part-timers in the scene, and they need to get more committed.
Yeah.
So Patrick DeFasten, hey Patrick, he asks, what is your opinion on all these online streams, or how visual artists are working with improving / continuing their sets online with 3D engines like Unreal, Unity, etc.? Is it a solid alternative, and why? Yes or no?
Basically, I know that some platforms in Glasgow, mainly queer nights, have used, like what was mentioned in Zoom, as a way to like generate some income to pay, like to help to support the artists. Even if it's like £1,500 each, it was something. So in that sense, like the internet has been used to like basically have artists have some type of payment and keep a kind of workflow coming in and the exposure going. It also allows for people who aren't necessarily in that location to access it. I've been in Zoom parties before where like there's been people in there that are from Brazil. That would never happen if it was a physical thing. So in that sense, it's bringing communities that are so far apart in terms of the world, but it's bringing us closer, and that's been really, really cool. I don't know about visuals. I've not seen anything about that, so someone else can answer that.
Well, the potential is there, I suppose, for online, for visuals to take a greater play, actually, to become more to the front. So then here's another question. How do you keep your community enthusiastic about the nightlife that once was, as we wait for clubs to open back up? I mean, personally, I don't think that you guys have to do anything to keep people enthusiastic. People are dying for nightlife right now. It's like the longer we don't have access to nightlife, the more we want to, and the more enthusiastic people will be once it returns, is my feeling. I could be wrong. They're actually, I want to share an anecdote told me by John Dunn from Parallel Lines, who is a promoter who works mostly in London. He mostly works in concerts. But he said that what he noticed in terms of ticket sales is that certain demographics are still very, very enthusiastic, largely young people, and certain demographics are not, seem to have dropped off the face of the earth. So that would be more older people, or like maybe people in their late 30s and onwards. So that's in terms of ticket sales for concerts, and I think there's probably there might be a similar correlation for clubs, where certain people will just drop off, but then other people will just really be dying for nightlife.
Yeah, I think when we reopened in Shanghai, some people were super enthusiastic and coming out straight away. But I guess the older demographic, I think they just got kind of used to staying at home all the time and got into a routine of
exactly
reading and going to bed early and that. So it took quite a while for them to start coming out again and get used to that kind of thing. But they did come back in the end. So, but yeah, it's weird reopening, because I half the people are super enthusiastic, and the other half, it took a long time to kind of drag them out and get them back into like the kind of scene again.
Do you think that it's you're in terms of the audience, that it's sort of back to normal now?
Yeah, it's kind of better than it was before. Like,
Wow.
it's kind of a bit busier. That might also be because like 1 or 2 places did close down. So maybe there's just less venues. But also it seems that people are drinking more. People are spending more on the bar. I don't know if that's because they've got more. I don't know if they've got more disposable income because they haven't traveled, or I'm not really sure why that is.
They clearly don't work in the events industries.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to address that question?
Maybe.
Sorry, Dimitri, what did you say?
Maybe China has China a medical treatment in between? I mean, that, and the result is maybe that people drink more, more fun, or is there anything, something like that, Gareth? Is there any treatment? No.
Any treatment for?
Medical treatment, like Russia, they came up, with this vaccine and said they have something. And I think in September, October, we start with injection. 6 different pharma companies have serious plans, to change the situation. So we see this year, in the end of the year, that the injection start, and but China is doing nothing. I don't know. Is there
Not
anything
that I know of. I don't think so.
Protects?
Okay, so last question from Peter Heuser. Do you think this situation will help burst the bubble of enormously inflated DJ fees and agents milking smaller promoters / nights in countries outside of the rich West world, where I'd say Poland is sadly one of those countries where young people can't afford to go out clubbing as much as they can in Western Europe, or at least afford the ticket fees some of us promoters need to put up in order to break even on expensive bookings? Do you think it'll happen alongside of more of a paradigm shift towards venues supporting more local talent, whilst hopefully also paying them fairly? Let me know your thoughts on that if you can.
I would hope that's where it's headed, that like there's a shift there, and huge festivals, big clubs start focusing on more local talent and local promoters and really working on a community basis rather than just booking in big names. I hope that's where it's headed. I really do.
Although it seems, judging from the business Techno account, it looks like.
But let's just I don't know, maybe people will wake up by the time they realize that COVID's passed and we've kind of gotten through the maddest time. Maybe that. No, I don't know.
Anybody else?
I think Tresor will definitely change we definitely change the booking strategy, in future. We will look out for our resident DJs or international DJs living in Berlin, and or moving to Berlin. We definitely will change this. And I tell Peter, who asked this question, he's young, he should start an own club. He finds something, why not, and then he can realize all his visions or ideas he has in this. I think that's the best way. And I allow all mistakes you do, why not? One day somebody else has to start something new, why not? Maybe it's a good moment.
Okay, Peter, the ball's in your court. So with that, I want to say thank you to all the panelists. Your experience and your generosity in terms of the information you've been sharing has been very valuable. I want to thank Unsound for hosting this conversation. I want to thank anybody who's out there watching. I have no idea who is out there watching, but I hope that this was useful in some manner. And I hope everybody still wants to club once we're able to. So thanks to everybody. And till next time. Yeah, thanks. But so Papas, you can cut the stream.